Hi everybody, it's Franny, and today we're going over how to care for your cloth convertible top. I'm going to go through all the steps to properly clean your top, and then once it's clean and dry, we're going to add a protectant to it, which will allow the water to bead off the top all year long and help keep the top quite a bit cleaner. I've picked the oldest top on the cars, and this is a 1995, so I think it's probably original. We do have a little spot of wear here that we want to be careful of, not to get a lot of water in. And something else I want to show you that's kind of interesting. See this stitching here? This stitching is white. It should be black, the same color as the stitching that's along here. So this is one of the indications that tells me this top is quite old, because it's actually bleached out this stitching, and there's some of it back here as well. Now, very quickly about this car is a plastic rear window. So you can see right on here, it says to do not rub this dry. That's one of the most important things about a plastic rear window, is never to touch it when it's dry. Looking over here, we have the same sort of wear here. I'm not seeing a lot of spots on the top. Looks like there's a little one here. I've got my windows all the way up, of course, and we're checking the seals here. You can see from the color that this is a little bit old. So you just want to be careful not to squirt water in there really hard. You can see where it sort of gets a little bit wet inside there. Our next step is to use our lint roller. We're just trying to pick up any loose bits on it before we get started, and also mainly little bits of hair. That seems to be the hardest thing to get out. So we just run it over the top here. These work really well. We can already see that we're picking up quite a bit of dirt on the top as well. So this is always a great place to start. Next, we're going to wash the entire car. We want the car completely clean, because as we rinse the top, we don't want to get water spots. And if there's any dirt left on the car anywhere when we go to dry it, we don't want to scratch the paint at all either. Next, we're going to soak the top completely before we start cleaning it. We want to keep the top completely wet during this whole process. See how it's completely soaking the top? We definitely need to do this treatment. You can see why I wash the car first as well. The car is getting soaked as well, and I don't want any water spots. With the top good and wet, we're going to use our all-purpose cleaner and our small brush. And we're just going to do small sections at a time, working into the crevices here, any stitching that you see, anywhere that really needs it. And if you've got any other spots that we saw when we did our initial inspection, you want to hit those as well. Now, you're probably wondering at this point, why didn't I just use car soap? It's actually a really good soap. The problem is that it's designed to foam up like crazy. So if you use it on your top, when you go to rinse, you're going to have a heck of a time getting all that soap out. So the all-purpose cleaners really work a little better for this. They're still obviously pretty sudsy here, but not nearly as bad as the regular shampoo you use for the paint. So we want to work into these little crevices here. Let's work our brush into this rain guard here. And then just continue on doing a section at a time. It's probably best not to let this dry completely. So if it looks like it's drying, it's pretty sunny out and kind of warm out today. So I'll keep an eye on this. If it looks like it's going to dry, I'm going to throw a little water on it. All right, I'll just continue with the whole rest of the top. A couple of areas to be careful of is the plastic window. You don't want to scratch it with your brush at all. You want to make sure you get into all the nooks and crannies and things, and try to keep the top wet as you go. With our top all nice and clean, next step is just going to be to dry it. Just remember to be very careful around your plastic rear window here. You don't want to scratch that. They're so hard to get scratches out of. With our top all dried off, we're still going to need to let it sit for a while to be completely dry. So make sure now that you go back and dry the entire car so you don't have any water spots. Well, we've let our top dry completely, but as you can see, there is a bit of debris on the top still, just like we thought there'd be. So we're going to use our roller, and we want to make sure that this top is completely clean before we apply our 303. There we go. Just roll through the whole thing. Now we're seeing a little bit of fuzz on our roller, but we're not seeing any dirt. That's a good indication that we got the top good and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and just roller the rest of the top. Not going to bore you with that. And then next step is going to be to apply the 303. Now we're ready to apply the 303, but what I've done first is put a little bit of tape on the paint around the top here. This stuff can be a little bit difficult to get off of painted surfaces. All right, so we have two different ways of doing this. I've got a small little foam brush here and a little cup with this stuff in it. And I'm gonna give this a try. So this is just a regular solo sprayer you can use for just about anything really. And I've filled it up and pumped it up, and we'll see if that works. Now, if you have the handheld sprayer, it's basically going to be the same thing as this. Couple of cautions. Like I said, this stuff, once it sets up, is very hard to get off of any surface. The second thing is it's also quite flammable, so be careful. You wouldn't want to use, you can use something like this pressurized thing, because you're not atomizing it. Never atomize this stuff. Never put it in like an airbrush, for instance, that would atomize it. It can make it extremely dangerous. You don't want to super saturate the fabric. We just want a nice even coat. And just nice and even. That's what we're looking for. That looks great. We'll go back. We want it wet but not saturated. While it's wet, it's actually pretty easy to get right off. So don't worry about that. Just don't let it sit overnight and try and get it off. Now for the seams, it's best to use the brush. It's a little easier, I think, to get into. So we just paint the undersides of these seams. Now don't worry about it turning white. It will turn black when it's done. It won't be shiny like this at all. Like in here, for instance, and this is a little bit of a delicate area because of this damage. Want to make sure you get all the threads as well, so we want to protect them. Now on this car, it also has a bit of fabric right here as well. I'm going to open the door and hit this as well. And we'll use our brush for this. Now we'll go ahead and move to the other side and do the other half of the top. For the area around the plastic window here, I'm going to be using my brush on this because it's a little hard to spray and not get it everywhere. So you want to work it into the fabric. Get this bead all the way around. Well, I think that's about it for the first coat. Now, I was reading the instructions and 303 says you just need to do a single coat on this, and I think that would be fine if that's what you want to do. They suggest that you do it out in the sunlight to allow this to set up. My guess is that this is more of a liquid paraffin. It sure smells like it. So if it's a sort of a wax-based thing, getting the heat on it will actually help it adhere to the fibers. I'm actually going to let this sit up for about half an hour, and then the horizontal surfaces that I know are going to get the worst pelting, I'm going to go ahead and give it a second coat. Just a nice light mist all over it. Now that we have this completely coated, I'm going to go back around the painted surfaces. That stuff looked like it kind of went everywhere. And hit it a bit with, this is actually waterless car wash from Adams Polishes. You can use detail spray, whatever. I just want to get whatever it is off of the paint. Now the car has a very good coat of wax on the car. That's another good thing to start with, but I just don't want that on the paint. So it comes off the glass pretty easily, but it's down here where you just want to maybe hit it with a little bit of detail spray, just in case there's some overspray. And don't forget your windshield. There's just a small barrier between the top and the windshield, so there's guaranteed to be a decent amount of spray on the windshield, so don't forget that. It's been about half an hour, so what I did was I took my microfiber towel and I just sort of lightly dragged it across the surface to break down any bit that was still on there. It looks really good. Then I ran the roller in some areas where I saw some fluff. It's kind of windy out today. And then I've already cleaned the car, so I'd rather not do that again. So I just placed a bunch of microfiber towels in different places here just so I don't have to do this all over again. The other thing I wanted to mention was my safety glasses. This stuff was kind of going everywhere, and it doesn't say on it that it's like toxic or scary or whatever, but still, I don't know, sprays of any kind. I should have worn them the first time, so my bad on that. Okay, here we go. Now, last time when we did it, we went across like this. I'm going to start out going back and forward just to give a crosshatch pattern. Looks like a pretty good and even amount there. We'll hit these side buttresses a little bit more. All right. With this second coat on here, we're pretty much done. So this needs to sit for about 6 to 12 hours depending on temperature. It should be above 70 degrees Fahrenheit-ish. And it's going to have to sit for a decent amount of time, probably overnight. You can't allow any water, so that includes mist in the morning as well. So you're going to want to keep the car in the garage unless it's extremely dry out. Our top looks great, but I have to confess, after that second coat, it just wasn't beating water the way I really wanted it to. So I waited for a really bright sunny day, very warm day, because when I did it the first time it was kind of cold and windy out. And I let the top get really warm out in the sun and went ahead and put another light coat over it, and I think that's really done the trick. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and see how it turned out. The water just rolls right off. Isn't that amazing? It's incredible. So your top's not going to get wet anymore, and it's going to stay quite a bit cleaner. Couple of closing thoughts on this. Now, if you have a boot cover like this car does, the boot cover is going to be made out of the same material as the top. So you want to treat it the same way. Go ahead and wash it and treat it with the 303, and it'll bead up just like this as well and keep it very clean. So the dirt, when it gets into these little fibers, can act like an aggregate and just destroy the fibers. So with the top completely treated like this, it's going to stay a lot cleaner, and any dirt or dust that's in the top, when you water it like this, the dirt will ride up on those little bubbles, and all you have to do really is just take your rag here and just drag it across the top. There you go, completely dry. Isn't that amazing? So this is a really good process. Remember, you need to do it in the sun. So that's the only caveat. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks so much, and until next time, safe travels. Bye.